Terrific. Good evening, everyone. My name is Janet Rosbach, and I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Volunteer Engagement at Baruch College. And I am so delighted that you have joined us today for our launch of our Asian Heritage Alumni Network. We have a tremendous alumni panel prepared for you this evening and look forward to a dynamic and lively discussion. I invite you all to type in questions to the panel in the chat box, which we will share towards the end of the program. And if you might kindly turn your video off so we can all focus on our panelists, that would be terrific as well. We are exceptionally delighted to welcome a special guest with us to launch our conversation tonight. President-designate David Wu is actually mid-move up to New York City and will join us officially as the new president of Baruch College as of July 1. But he was so excited to learn about this initiative and hear about our plans for this network that he kindly agreed to say a few words to help us launch this this initiative. So, President Wu, I pass the baton to you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Janet, and good evening, everyone. And as Janet said, I don't officially start until July 1st, but this is actually one of my official first event for Baruch, and so I'm very glad to do that. And I guess I'm starting the countdown. I can't wait to get there in New York, and today is actually literally my move out date, and I actually spent the whole day, working with the mover and moving out my current place in Virginia. So I won't be able to stay for the whole panel, but I'm glad I'll be able to be with you for a little bit here at the beginning here. And over the past couple of months, as you know, that my initial announcement was back in February, and this is before all this chaos happened. And I actually came on campus for a welcoming event on my behalf toward the end of February, and was able to meet with many of the Baruch faculty and the students and alum and so on and so forth. And since then, since COVID has occurred, I continue to meet some of the folks over Zoom, and I have been really impressed with the kind of commitment and enthusiasm and the passion that everyone in the Baruch community has demonstrated, and made me feel really welcomed and absolutely excited to come to New York. And some of you may know that both of my kids, and they are grown up now. One is 31 and not 28, and both of them are working and living in New York City. And so they are very excited for us to move to the city. At least that's what they said. So this is really very exciting for our entire family, not just for myself. And first, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. And as you know, that I was born and raised in Taiwan, and I'm a naturalized American citizen. I've been in the States for almost 40 years now. It's hard to believe. And I came here as a international student, and perhaps share that that background with some of you. And I remember, actually, I still remember, although this is almost 40 years ago, I actually arrived at JFK airport, and that was my port of entry. And as soon as I got out of the the airport, I went to downtown and walking around. I may have walked by Baruch. I wouldn't know at that time. But I still remember I was pretty wide-eyed and really excited of all the opportunities. And I can't imagine, I can't believe how lucky I am to be here. And now 40 years later, I have, coming back to New York and being able to serve a great institution. And my wife and I actually got married in New York. And this is shortly after we arrived here. And so this is, and as I mentioned, both of my kids are here. So this is a lot of ways feels like a homecoming to me. And so I went to Penn State to do my doctorate and my master's study in engineering, and then I worked a little bit in the industry, and then I sort of came back to academia, and I'm in academia for almost 35 years now, and I'm currently the provost and the executive vice president of George Mason University. This is outside of Washington, D.C. And before that, for about 10 years, I was the dean of engineering school at Lehigh University and in Pennsylvania, which is actually not very far from New York City. I guess it's typically about an hour and a half to the front of Lincoln Tunnel. So after that, who knows, right? So so it's actually pretty close, and we come into the city all the time, and so on. And I've been, I guess, mostly on the East Coast, and I did my sabbatical at University of Pennsylvania. I have been a board member at Dartmouth College Engineering School for over 10 years. I'm still am. With I guess my training is primarily in systems engineering, which actually has a lot of overlap in areas like financial engineering, econometrics, and optimization and things like that. And so I think I see some of you have a bit of a finance background and so on and so forth. So I can certainly relate to that, and I have a lot of passion for all the different disciplines like public policy and as well as arts and humanities and so on. So I although I'm an engineer, I try to broaden my horizon over the years, in which I think I did that successfully. So I guess as you may have seen in announcement, so happens I am the first Asian American president of the CUNY system ever. So this is since I guess the mid 1849, and so I guess to that I take that with a great pride, and I think I also see it as part of my my overall mission to in some ways highlight the success and accomplishments of our Asian American alumni population and their accomplishments. And I know that over 40% of our students are actually of Asian heritage, and which is excellent. And also we have over 30,000 Baruch alums, and that's identified with Asian heritage. So I'm glad that I'm able to join you in this the launch of this Asian Heritage Alumni Network. It's launching event, and when David Shenton asked me this, and he said, "Are you sure? You know that's your moving day?" I said, I'm not going to miss it. I'm going to come with my with my T-shirt if I have to. But anyway. So on a little serious note, and as you know, in the past few months, and not only we have COVID around us, I'm sure everybody suffered from it. And actually, I just heard a very sad news today. And one of the vice chancellor at CUNY, Alan Liu, just passed away this morning due to COVID. And I actually met Alan several times. I was very impressed with him. And he was the first vice chancellor that's of the Asian American descent. So so very sad news. So on top of the COVID, we also see a great national movement basically against racism in a lot of different ways. And I feel compelled to write a letter to the Baruch community, and some of you may have seen that. And I think this is really an important time for us all stand together, not only as someone with the Asian heritage, but all the different backgrounds and Black, Latinx, and the various different communities within our community that may, in one way or the other, felt that they don't belong, or they don't always fit in, and so on and so forth. And I think this is an important time of reckoning in many ways, and I think it's important for us to help each other through this and support each other. And because, as you know, the advances of any underrepresented group is advancement for everyone else as well. And so in many ways that the Asian American community has really benefited from many of the struggles from the civil rights movement back in the 50s and 60s. And so on and so forth. So I'm sure everybody have a deep understanding of that, and I think it's so important for us to support each other in that regard. So one of the effort, I know Mitch Wallerstein, who by the way has a great shoes for me to fit, and Mitch is a great guy, and I'm sure many of you met him. And one of the things he did, he earlier this year sent out a presidential council on diversity and inclusion. And so the council has just started, but they haven't had a chance to really do a whole lot yet. And so one of my first acts as president is I have recommitted myself to start with that council and really look into some of the both internal and external issues of racism and inequality, and to create a better, more welcoming climate for everyone. And so this is something of very high priority for me. And of course, as an immigrant myself, this is also deeply personal to me. And so it's not just something that I want to do as president, but also something personally very important to me. I just want to share that with you. So now you're not coming to this event to hear me, but we have many distinguished panelists. And so I very much look forward. I can stay for a little bit to hear some of the questions and comments. And as I wrap up here and start on July 1, and I very much look forward to meeting you, and both in person and if not in Zoom, and I'm sure there will be many opportunities. So thank you so much for having me, and very nice to meet you on this very special occasion. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Yes, clap emoji. Most appreciated for you spending some of your day with us.
Thank you.
I would now like to introduce Po Sit. He is a member of our Baruch College Fund board, and one of the co-chairs, along with Christine Lee-Ayung, of this new network. So Po, please.
Sure. Thank you, Jeanette. Thank you, President Wu. Good evening, everyone. It is an exciting time to see all of you, even though virtually only. My name is Po Sit. I graduated from Baruch in 1985, and I'm currently a partner at David Spock and Wallwell, an international law firm headquartered in New York City. Before I make my remarks tonight, I would like to recognize the president of the Baruch College Fund, Helen Mills. Helen, if you are online, please just wave to the audience. I think Helen is on. Okay, I guess that Helen may not.
Yes, she's on. Let's just, yeah. Helen, will you, let's see. Helen, do you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to start my, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful, this initiative. We're so happy that Bo and Christine have started the Asian Heritage Alumni Network. It's very, very exciting.
Try your video again, Helen.
I'm sorry.
Try your video once again.
Thank you. It says the host is not letting me do that.
Oh, goodness. All right, let's try that again. Sorry, please continue.
Okay.
Anyway, I just wanted to say welcome, everyone. We're so happy to have you starting this new initiative. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Helen. Under the leadership of Helen, the BCF is doing some amazing things for the college and for the students. So I'm very glad that we are able to welcome President Wu tonight, who, as he said, is the first Asian American president of the college and, in fact, of the entire QLE system. So that's great. I'm also very honored to co-host this event with Christine to kick off the Baruch Asian Heritage Alumni Network. I joined the board of BCF last year with one goal, and one single goal, is to promote the participation of alumni with Asian heritage in the welfare of our college. Tonight's event represents the first step of achieving that goal, and I sincerely hope that all of you will join us on this wonderful journey. A group of us, as Janet has said, including Christine and myself, started to organize a kickoff event for the network in the fall of last year. And we envisioned that the network would have 4 missions. First and foremost, to serve a platform for our Asian and Asian American alumni to share their professional experience, their career advice, and their perspectives. Just in the tri-state area, do you know that we actually have at least 20,000 Asian and Asian American alum? In fact, I bet that we have Baruch alum in every single major industry and global financial and business center on this planet. The bottom line is we have a wonderful, powerful network. The network will also allow us to have fun together too. For example, we may one day travel together to visit our alum on the other side of the country, or even across the Pacific Ocean. After tonight's event, we will send out a survey to solicit ideas from all of you about the kinds of events that you would like to see. Because after all, this is our network, so let's participate. Our second mission is to highlight and recognize our distinguished alum, just like the people that you are going to meet later tonight, and their professional accomplishments. Our primary objective is to allow our students to have role models to look upon when they begin their professional careers. Remember, like myself, a lot of our students are the first generation in their family to attend a college. In addition, by recognizing the professional success of our alum, I hope that we will be able to promote the name recognition of Baruch beyond the city. Third, the network will help the college to recruit our talented alum to come back to mentor students, to speak at student events, or participate in other activities with our students. I'm confident that if you have the opportunity to meet some of our students, you will, like me, be very impressed and even inspired by their drive, their accomplishment, and their dreams. Let me give you some data points so that you can understand how great they're doing. Just amongst my recent mentees, one was a Fulbright scholar, one graduated from Columbia Law School, one graduated from Harvard Law School, and one is currently attending the business school at Dartmouth University. It is truly hard not to touch by their accomplishments, especially after hearing their stories as well as where they came from. Finally, we hope that the network will serve as a platform to encourage our Asian and Asian American alum to donate time and money to the college. We all should acknowledge that we are the beneficiaries of Baruch. When I entered Baruch in 1981, like many of our students, my family could not have afforded a private college for me. So I figured out that I probably saved over $100,000 by attending Baruch instead of a private college. By the way, in my case, not only I saved $100,000 in tuition money, I also met my wife at Baruch. So I owe the college more than just money. But seriously, more than just a place where many of us receive an excellent education and affordable rate, Baruch is also where many of us began our journey up the ladder of the American dream. Baruch has been consistently ranked as #1 out of more than 1,300 colleges on the Social Mobility Index. And 40% of our students are people with Asian heritage. Thus, Baruch is the institution that has consistently uplifted the socioeconomic class of Asian community in New York City. For us to turn our back on this institution is for us to turn our back on our own community. I hope that all of you will consider making a contribution to the college to show our commitment to the students who come after us and our community, and to show our appreciation to Baruch. Finally, once the pandemic is over, I'm looking forward to see all of you at an in-person event, which we have originally planned in the spring. All future emails regarding Baruch Asian Heritage Alumni Network will contain those specific words on the subject line. So please watch your email. Thank you all for allowing us to come into your home tonight, because I assume that most of you are joining us from your home. Now I'm going to hand over the program to Christine.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul, for your opening. And thank you, Dr. Wu, for coming here tonight when it's your moving date, and for your support, and Helen for being here tonight. Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Liao Young. I'm one of the Baruch College Fund trustees, along with Paul, who's co-founding and working on this event and this affinity group tonight. So we're very excited for the launch. And we hope that we'll have a great conversation about panelists tonight. And afterwards, you'll find that from wherever you are from Baruch, you could go anywhere in the world. A quick introduction about myself. I graduated Baruch. I'm a 3-time alumna. I study accounting, computer information systems, along with a master's in finance. My husband, as well, is a Baruch Bearcat alum. I have an accounting background in finance, did a lot of work in the startup world with fintech, currently COO advisor at a company called Advisory Cloud. I was one of the humble and underprivileged Asian American immigrant who was the first to come to go to college for the generosity of the Baruch College Fund. I'm actually a recipient of the Presidential Scholarship. So to serve on the board now has been full circle for me to be able to give back from the generosity that Baruch has given me, so that I could be the first in my family to obtain a college education. So I came here as an immigrant when I was 9 from Hong Kong. So like many of you, have gone on to also receive an MBA from the University of Oxford. So just really want to let all the Bearcats know that from Baruch, you could really go anywhere. But now let's turn to our panelists and have them introduce themselves one by one so that you get to know a little bit about them as we kick off the panel tonight. So we're going to start off with John Hui.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, Christine. My name is John Hui. I am a Baruch BBA 2002. I originally grew up in Shanghai, China, attended a 2 years of college there. Also came as an immigrant in the late 90s. When I arrived in the US, my English was so bad, I barely could fill out the custom entry form. So Baruch to me was definitely symbolic. As at that time, a lot of people called that either the Harvard for immigrants or the Harvard for the poor. I think it offers really the best affordable college education that I could take at that time. So happy to share more experience with the panelists. I currently run a healthcare IT startup company in New York City called the Triage. It provides a novel communication technology used between ambulances and hospitals. During COVID, we actually helped the hospitals in 13 states triage close to 2,000 patients. So it's definitely a life-saving technology. Happy to share more later on.
Thank you, John. Next we go to Joseph Huang.
Hi, yes, thanks, Christine. I just want to thank you, Janet, all the fellow panelists here, really excited for this program. My name is Joseph Fong. I am a second generation Korean. I was born here, but both my parents immigrated from South Korea. I graduated from Baruch back in 2005 from the Honors College with an accounting degree. I also like Poe. I came here for more than just an education. I also met my wife here at Baruch College. I also didn't realize, Poe, your words, that Baruch holding the title of just really enhancing social mobility. And I think that's really heartening. I think, certainly, Baruch for me as well, was the gateway to the American dream, as you so eloquently put it. I got an offer from Goldman Sachs, right out of college in the regulatory group. And that's what I've been doing for more or less the past 15 years or so. And I'm now a managing director in the regulatory policy group here at Goldman Sachs, where I look after, all of the, I would say, internal interpretations and policy related to the regulatory capital rules that, banks and broader financial institutions are subject to, as well as all the external advocacy, liaising with the regulators, around those topics. And, during my 15 years here at Goldman Sachs, I also, got a part-time MBA, from NYU Stern as well. And, as, like John, looking forward to the discussion and the panel here today, and looking forward to, I think, learning more and engaging more with this program on the go forward.
Thank you, Joseph. Next, we have Kenneth Miao.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, President Wu. Thank you, Janet. And thank you, Poe. So my name is Ken Miao, and I'm a mixed Chinese and Colombian. So New York was known as the mixing pot of immigrants, and my mother and father met here from different regions. Born in the U.S. At Baruch, I got a degree in accounting. I graduated back in '85, same time as Poe. So that was really amazing that we're almost contemporaries, or we are in contemporaries. I got a JD from Columbia, and then LLM from NYU in tax. That's my chosen field, and an MBA from NYU. I work at Marsh & McLennan, which is a U.S. multinational Fortune 500 company. We have over 65,000 people, employees, and over, just truly over 130 countries that we're represented in. And I am the chief tax counsel there. And I really credit my rise to attending Baruch, because Baruch was my first opportunity, the first generation to go to college, and it was a really great opportunity for me. So I am deeply indebted to Baruch. So I'll always remember that. And that's it.
Thank you. Next, we have Nadida Agarwal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, President Wu, for joining us today and gracing us with your special wisdom. And thank you, Paul, for your amazing introduction. I'm a very big fan of the Baruch College. I I came here in 2005. Sorry, I graduated in 2005 from the Baruch MFE program. And I was the second batch for this esteemed program run by the most incredible dynamic man, Dan Stefanica. And I have been very, very grateful to this program because that has helped me all throughout my career. I've been involved with the alumni for like on a different varied different things I've done with Baruch over the last few years. I've been working with City for the last 6 years, and in the MSS transformation team, I work on big data on the regulatory aspects. Very looking forward to talking to all of you about the different aspects, how we can help out in the future.
Thank you, Nadina. And finally, we have Seema Chowdhury.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you for all of your introductions. My name is Seema Chowdhury. I'm speaking specifically to my Asian cultural heritage. My father is from Pakistan. My mother is from Guyana of Indo-Caribbean heritage, so of Indian origin. And I was born and raised in New York City. I received my master's in public administration degree through the National Education Program. And that was 2 years ago in 2018. I graduated with my bachelor's degree from Queens College back in 2011 and in anthropology. And I currently work at South Asian Youth Action as the Young Women's Leadership Program Manager. And South Asian Youth Action is a youth organization that, although it focuses on the South Asian youth experience, it is inclusive of all youth, and we're based in Queens. Also a national capacity fellow, and national capacity is an organization that advocates on behalf of the API community nationally on economic and social justice. And like everyone before me has mentioned, I'm super excited to be here with you all, and I can't wait to dig into our discussion today.
Hey, Christine.
Thank you. And then we have one more panelist.
Hey, Christine.
Paul
sorry.
Zhang.
Yep, I came in late. So Paul Zhang.
Paul, please.
Thanks everyone. Again, thanks David and Janet and Poe and Christine. Great to be here. And Paul Zhang. I'm a commercial real estate partner at Cohen Resnick. We're a mid-sized accounting firm, about 3,000 plus people. I've been with the firm for about 9 years. Specializing in debt and equity strategies, all things real estate. Prior to that, I spent 5 years at a Big Four firm, but got my undergrad, in accounting like most people back in 2004. And then I went back to get my master's of Science in Real Estate in 2013. So great to be here again, and thanks everyone.
Thank you for the introductions from our panelists. So let's start tonight's discussion a little bit about the big picture. So as we all know, we've been experiencing what we call the fourth industrial revolution. But I think accelerating it right now is we have a pandemic. We also have the Black Lives Matter movement. So we have all these different things simultaneously happening at the same time. And we all know that the world is fast changing. So given this dynamic, why don't we go across each of the panelists, if you could discuss some of the macro level trends that you are seeing emerging in your respective industry, because I know we have panelists from all different industry. And we'll start with John, who with his company Triage and in healthcare has been on the forefront with the pandemic and the COVID-19 crisis. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the trends you see in that area, John?
Sure, Christine. Thank you. So we're in the business of helping healthcare providers, especially Triage was really designed for this kind of emergency response, helping healthcare providers to accelerate emergency response time to transform the antiquated phone or radio-based technology they use. What we see in the industry is crisis typically bring opportunities. So we've seen a lot of innovation coming out from the space, that especially entrepreneurial organization tend to respond very fast. And on the hospital side, what it typically takes longer time, that could be years, as many industry experts were saying, that the speed of accepting new technology, particularly related to COVID, have definitely accelerated. On the other hand, we also see technologies that are more adapted of dealing with the response from the broader technology, as everyone knows, Zoom or remote-based technology that's readily adapted. Everyone becomes the best friend of Zoom, right? Every day you deal with a multiple meeting invites on Zoom, to more niche-based technology to improve the efficiency. So I think the crisis always bring you opportunities. This is the time really for entrepreneurial-minded business people to pivot, and again, we're gonna create a lot of winners, but there will also be losers who act slowly.
Thank you. Joseph, what are your views on from the world of big banking at Goldman Sachs and in the regulatory space? What are some of the trends you see coming out of this?
Sure. Yeah, I think there are two big things that I see, and I think this is probably something that's you could argue is universal across various different companies. I think one is just an increasing commitment to technology. Just to echo some of the points that John just made, and I think finding ways to automate, get away from Excel, which is a really big thing when I was coming up to the firm. And finding ways to, I would say, remove a lot of the manual work that so many people do in terms of rote sort of exercises, so that folks can actually spend their time analyzing and thinking about solving issues. And technology also as a way to we talk a lot about how we as a business can disrupt and innovate, but also at the individual personal level, how we sort of disrupt and innovate within our own sort of spheres of influence within the company. But just from a Goldman sort of macro corporation perspective, I don't know if many of the folks know, but you can now get a banking account with Goldman Sachs. Not to plug my own company, but it's an online only bank. But we as a firm talk a lot about how we are using technology and machine learning to assess risks, identify opportunities, and to make banking easier, and largely as a way, for us to disrupt, some of the long-standing traditional commercial banks that are out there. I think it's a trend that will continue and accelerate, even within, like I said, my more sort of personal, day-to-day jobs. It is an initiative within, my firm, kicked off recently to try to have everyone learn at least some baseline level of computer coding, which is absolutely terrifying for me, but it just speaks to, I think, the importance of technology and innovation and disruption, just kind of going forward. And the second, to your point, Christine, about, Black Lives Matter and the ongoing sort of, I would say, commitment to fighting against racism, I think there's been more of an active commitment to diversity. And with that, again, accelerating, just given the current events of today, I think firms just more broadly are realizing just how absolutely critical and important it is to have teams of different backgrounds and perspectives to ensure that there is diversity of thought and opinions, as we try to solve unique problems, within our respective areas and disciplines of study and work. And I think there's been numerous studies that have shown that improved diversity is also really good for business. And so it's one of those things that hits on multiple birds, with one stone. And certainly within Goldman, we've initiated a lot of mandatory sort of diversity interviewing and recruiting. We have programs to identify, strong performers across diversity groups, really to try to, ensure that, we are, raising the diversity profile, within the firm. But I think just more broadly, finding ways to be active, I think, within the community as well.
No, thank you. Next we go to Kenneth. Kenneth, you're in tax. So definitely with the COVID-19, we know tax deadlines have been delayed, and people are sometimes, even companies are having problems. There's also all these like payroll protection program and schemes like that coming out. So what are some of the trends you're seeing from the perspective of tax that will be emerging from all of these crises?
It's not just tax. It's from a multinational perspective.
Mhm.
So, like I echo what John and Joseph had mentioned, which is automation and robotics and that sort of technology moving up that curve very quickly. What we're seeing is that there's a lot of pressure on the business to do more with less, and robotics and technology is really the way to do it. To be able to accomplish what you need to get accomplished, to put in processes and procedures so that you can remove a lot of the human element from the low level work and sort of like leverage them to do more higher level analytical type work. What it means is also that what I'm seeing is that there's a lot of pressure to keep costs contained. And so, you can't hire more bodies. So what you do is you leverage using the technology that you have and whatever new investments you could make in technology to make people more efficient. So for instance, my company, we've acquired a number of different other conglomerates, and we're not increasing the number of people, but rather what we're doing is just increasing our investments in technology to address all the work that's needed to be done there. So I see that. And what's very interesting is, there was this sense that, you had to be in the office now, and people had this predisposition to think that if you're out of sight, forget it, you're not doing any work. What COVID has shown us is that people can do their work and they don't have to be in the office. And so I'm seeing a trend now, and things that we're doing internally is rethinking the working patterns of people, saying that, we all need to be in the office when, let's say, we're in a post-COVID environment. What are we going to do with our real estate? What are we going to do with, with having the people, enabling people with the technology so they can get their work done? We're seeing that people are efficient, not being in the office, perhaps not as efficient as being in the office because you miss something, but you make it up by putting in processes in place where you have like manual connection points. So in the office, one of the benefits of being in the office is you have the opportunity of those chance encounters. You hear things over the water cooler, you hear things, other people talking, and you get ideas, and then you realize there are opportunities there. You don't really get that when everybody's isolated in their homes, but you try to encourage the use of technology like Zoom parties and Zoom meetings, those type of interactions. And so I'm seeing that as another movement that we're moving to be more remote. And when you stop and you think about that, it also changes how you hire people. People don't have to be, once you make a commitment that you're going to move away from being in the office, people don't have to be in the same time zone, for instance. You could hire across the country. And that's something that a number of, I know in the professional organizations, they've been doing that, but in a lot of corporations, they really haven't been doing that. And I'm seeing more of that and more entertaining of that kind of a concept.
Yeah, definitely. There is definitely a move towards remote work. And we've seen that with Silicon Valley companies leading the way even a few years ago before the pandemic, mostly because of cost, because the San Francisco Bay Area just so expensive for talent that they started doing that more for cost efficiency. But I think with COVID, definitely agree that there's a movement towards remote work going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Nandia, you are at Citi and you work with a lot on big data and algorithms. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about some of the trends you'll be seeing in the acceleration of technology on that front.
So I've been doing, I'm hearing these, a lot of the comments around remote work and how technologies help. It's absolutely incredible to even think that all of us have been working remotely the last 3 months, 4 months, and the banks have all been doing really, really well, with 2 to 3% of their workforce coming into the bank. They have actually performed extremely well. So a large part of it is you think of the human psyche, that human beings are so resilient that they kind of figure out a way to work or make it work. But I think in terms of technology, obviously you look at the hardware piece and how great that piece has worked for thousands of people who can actually log on remotely and work through the cloud, etc. That is unthinkable, like something like that even 5 years ago would have been very, very difficult. So I think we've made like excellent strides in technology, but in terms of like the software aspect of it, I see a big trend towards doing your own like coding. Like you do rely on like your big like for like you do rely on your technology teams, but a lot of groups are looking towards, especially like in terms of data and everything, you should be knowing Python. You should be knowing it's not anymore C++ or Java that much, but like you Python is like such an important thing. It's almost like Excel now. So I highly recommend anybody who's looking to start work or who's coming out, like that's something that I know MFE programmers, everybody, they do Python, but I'm saying in general, it's like such an important thing. It's almost like I think in the next 3 years, Python will most likely be replacing Excel in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the key trends that I'm looking at. Also, I don't know if you guys have heard of NLP, which is natural process language, artificial intelligence. So the banks are really like very interested in automating everything, automating like the way the trade processes work, the way you're looking at chats, the way so it's become a very important part of their day-to-day operations. I remember when I was in my MFE program, my professor used to use this. This is another professor who used to say that financial like banks, their technology, you can put it in a matchbox. They are like so, and now I see that trend is changing. They want to be more technical, like almost like a technology firm. They want to like invest in innovation and etc.
Thank you. Paul, in a world of real estate at Resnick, where you work with many clients, what do you see as some of the trends that are emerging? Because we hear companies coming up called prop tech that are now involving technology and real estate. So what are some of the trends you're seeing in that space?
Yeah, so as an audit partner at Resnick, I'm personally responsible for about $4 billion in assets. So ranging across pretty much every food group, from your traditional office building to your multifamily. And I think a lot of this has with COVID especially has accelerated some of the concerns, and this is just purely my observation, but in terms of high priced real estate in these major metropolitan areas. And I think what it's made, and I think especially we've experienced this as a firm, it's made the concept of a location agnostic workforce kind of a realistic idea. And even for our offices, we have 27 across the US, and we're able to tap in to other locations east to west coast to leverage what we have, as opposed to hiring, which is also important. So that's one observation that we've seen that's kind of playing into a lot of corporate companies who really are thinking twice now to pay the high New York City type rent. And I also think, so just on a side note, I think it's also a little bit scary because as accountants, I always say, we're not salespeople. You graduate, and as you kind of move up the ranks, there's an element of sales that you're involved in. But I'd be curious to see what happens in terms of how the younger generation, and if this is some of the new norm, how that networking element is kind of put into curriculums and how they're taught. Because I certainly think this is a lot harder than having a cup of coffee with someone.
Thank you. So Seema, you work a lot with immigrant youths in your nonprofit. So what are some of the trends you're seeing in that space right now?
Yeah, I think working in the nonprofit sector as well, and within the youth development space, there's been such with everything going on, there's been such a need for intersectionality in the work that we do. There's been an increase in solidarity realizing that we're all so interconnected in the issues that we're facing and all that we're experiencing, that there's been an increase in partnerships, in collaboration, in really working with a racial equity lens and working towards working with a racial equity lens in the work that we do. And then also echoing much of what was shared earlier on technology, and being in this sector, working with youth, it's such an in-person, face-to-face job that being virtual in this work is unheard of and a little bit strange, because as what we do is social and emotional development with our youth, and with technology, it can be very isolating. So we very quickly had to pivot to virtual learning, virtual platforms like Zoom. We've done Zoom sessions with our youth, tried to create activities and clubs that really center our youth and create spaces to process everything that's been going on, the ways in which they don't have very much say in what's going on as you know, because they're not adults as yet, they're youth, and so there's a lack of control in their lives. And so creating spaces, using technology through Facebook, Instagram, the different ways in which we've started to branch out and really used our platform has been supportive for our youth. And yeah, like I'm not in development, but within the development piece of the nonprofit sector, I think there's a need for more diversification of funding. Because in moments like these, in large scale disasters, we end up losing funding perhaps from the city, and that then changes programming and what we can do and how we can support our youth. So I think in the future, for sure, continuing with the flexibility of using virtual and maybe like a hybrid version of in-person learning, diversifying funding, and also needing to be innovative, figuring out different ways to be innovative. Yeah.
No, thank you. So I took a quick glance at our chat box, and it's actually going to touch on our next question. And I think a lot of people in our audience are wondering about barriers and the bamboo ceiling. So let's talk a little bit about that, because we know that as Asian Americans as a community, we are highly educated and we are highly represented at all levels of education. For example, if we look at the specialized high school here in New York City, you look at the population, you look at higher education and colleges, you look at Baruch, as Paul mentioned before, we now have 40% of our students population being of Asian descent. So while as a community, we obtain a high level, we're highly educated, and then we go into the workforce, but we seem to hit what we call the bamboo ceiling, where we're still, as a group, as Asian Americans, we're underrepresented in terms of the executive level or management at many Fortune 500 companies. So now many of you on this panels are currently executives. So I think from an audience and from myself, we want to find out more about what are some of the support systems you have received that helped you achieve, get to where you are right now, and what are some of the challenges and setbacks you face, and how did you deal with it? Like, what type of support did you get personally? Did you get support from your employer in terms of advancement, and how did your Baruch education help you? I guess for this one, we'll start with Paul, because Paul, your partner, so you could share your journey.
Yeah, sure. So, and I hope for those in the audience, I hope none of you follow my path, and I'll tell you why. But so for me, growing up, and I always never felt financial insecurity, so to speak. So I say my parents did a good job in terms of shielding me. But I think I really realized, how different, the social and economic playing field, and how far behind I was when I joined the workforce. And, a classic example was, growing up, I grew up in Queens, and one of the things to do was play handball. And for those of I'm not talking about the professional handball. It's, you get like a 99-cent air bounce ball, and you go to the park and you hit it against the wall. And that was kind of what you did. When I went to work, what I realized was, it wasn't really a conversation starter, because, a lot of the colleagues and clients that I, started to meet, they grew up playing tennis and golf. So, I think a lot of the social things that, kind of brought me to where I was, somewhat, I would say, ostracized me in a way, because, you really, as much as you want to fit in, when someone asks you to go play golf, like, you don't even know, like, how the game even plays, right? So just naturally, I think that was, a process where I had to unlearn a lot of the things that I grew up with and kind of, catch up, so to speak. So I want to say I spent a lot of my, early years as a professional playing catch up. But at the same time, I want to say the positive out of all of it was, it gave me a lot of perspective. I think, seeing, a lot of my friends and their friends and whatnot, kind of growing up and seeing the struggles, it gave me somewhat a broader perspective of, dealing with people, working with people, and kind of having the ability to, put myself into someone else's shoes, so to speak. So, and I always say, like, we I have a group I'm honored to, work with and help manage a team of, 30 people, let's say. And I always say, the folks that come out of real estate, the ones, and you could tell that, they're so hungry and they're so driven. And I always say, I joke with my team, sitting behind the desk, I mean, that's easy. I mean, working till 2 a.m, as opposed to doing, manual labor. I mean, I think I could do that all day. So, I think that was, the unlearning. And then I think I was very fortunate to have a mentor along the way. And, many mentors, both good and bad. So I would say, the good ones you grow with, but the bad ones you kind of say, look, this is who I don't want to become. And you kind of avoid that path. So that's my observation there.
Yeah. Thank you. Joseph, you are a managing director at Goldman Sachs, and you and I actually met at an Asian business conference on a similar topic for discussion. So maybe you could provide some of your perspective on this question.
Yeah, I think it's a really salient point. And, I co-chair, one of the Asian, affinity networks at Goldman Sachs, and have seen some of the data, for Goldman. And exactly as you mentioned, Christine, in short, Asians very well or overrepresented even at the junior levels and the middle manager level, and very underrepresented at the senior levels. And so, why aren't we seen as leaders, effectively? And I think some of that can be attributed to a difference in what is being stressed and what is being seen as important, I think, as we are brought up. And I think Paul made some really good and insightful points around that. Certainly for myself, I was brought up in a mold not to challenge authority. I was told to be seen, not to be heard, to work harder, let the work, speak for myself. And, these are traits that are valued, I think, certainly within my culture and my background as a Korean American. But those are very different, either the opposite or different from what, Goldman, and even now, I look for, when I bring people, into the firm. The types of people I look for are those who will question the status quo, look for ways to improve, really dig into, why are we doing this, finding ways to improve and question along the way. And I like the way Paul characterized it in that, there's a different game being played that I didn't even know, existed. I tell my mentees and junior people on my team all the time, if you aren't being heard, you're being forgotten, right? Have an opinion, say something, be remembered. Be remembered for saying something stupid, but at least you won't be forgotten, right? And finally, and I think this is one of the key points, is the idea that, your work will speak for yourself only gets you so far. Your work can speak for yourself, I found, up until a certain level of seniority or level of expertise. But the more senior you get, the harder it is to differentiate just based on your knowledge, particularly in your non-revenue generating functions, which is certainly where I sit. And at a certain point, the level of knowledge that I bring to the table, really isn't all that different from another at a similar level to me. And at that point, your work and what I will call, quote unquote, hard skills, right, will stop speaking for you. And rather, what I have found is that your soft skills become significantly more important. And in short, to transition to be, more senior and to get to the more senior levels, your soft skills will have to become your hard skills. And that's a very difficult transition, for everyone really. But I think particularly difficult, for me, and I think Asians more broadly who were brought up in a world of, honing in really only on the hard skills. Executive presence, speaking confidently, leadership skills, and in particular, developing a network, are all the things that will start speaking for you to help you get to the more senior levels. And I think your network and your sponsors are particularly important, as part of that. People who actively supported me, my network became extremely important in making, or helping me, make it to the next step. And, all of those skills are things that, I still struggle with, I find, even today. And similar to Paul, I was very lucky that a lot of the people, at Goldman took an active interest in my career, mentored me, championed for me, and really helped me to overcome a lot of the shortcomings. And I think you see, a lot of the really successful people, have good mentors, right? I'm going to talk about, just titans of industry like Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jobs over at, Apple. All of them, if you look at their history and read up on their, biographies and their backstories, they all had a strong mentor early on that really helped to guide them and navigate, a lot of the pitfalls and, ways to really, accelerate your career. And, I do give a lot of kudos to GS at Goldman Sachs, for realizing at least some of the issues and finding ways to try to overcome that gap. There's now a program to identify high-performing Asians and to provide them with leadership training and access to senior leaders within the firm. I think these sorts of programs are important in not only helping to develop the kind of skills that are needed to transition to more senior levels, but also important in engendering loyalty to the firm as well. And I think we, as alumni of Baruch, also have a role to play in helping to mentor those behind us. Just as I am extremely grateful that people took an interest in my career, I feel like I have a responsibility to pay that forward and really help others in their career as well.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you for all your insights. Nadina, how was your experience? Because as a woman, as an Asian, we're considered double minority. So what was your path to becoming a director at Citi?
It's a really good question. And where should I start? I don't know if you have like 4 hours now, but I have to say that I've never experienced discrimination. I mean, like just as a very basic tenet, like from the time that I joined Baruch, it was challenging, but it was always about how competent I was. And from the time I went from Baruch to JP Morgan to like all my other career, like other places that I worked at, I think it's always been about competence. Like there have been times where you realize that you're a woman, and that has I don't think being an Asian has ever been a obstacle for me. Maybe being a woman from time to time. I'm a mother of 2 little kids, so that obviously added to the discrimination. And I would be amiss to say that that didn't happen. That happens everywhere. And I think as a woman, I have to fight extra hard. As a woman, I have to prove extra hard. As a mother, I have to prove extra hard to everybody that I am not just your equal, I'm better. So I think just as in terms of like getting all that support, I would start from Baruch, where Professor Dan Stefanica, who was he was absolutely amazing as a mentor. He was not an official mentor, but he was a mentor to me. And then there were a lot of professors in the program that were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I learned a lot, not just the fact that you need to be extremely confident with the work that you do, because it's like a lot of it is programming, technology, understanding all that. But more than that, you bring a lot of the soft skills. And how do you marry the two is a really important skill throughout your life. And I think I learned that earlier on, thank God to those professors. And I don't know if you guys have met Professor Sally Nefchi, who's no longer with us anymore, but he was one of those professors who used to train, who used to like give hands-on experience. And I went to Geneva with him to teach a class of Swiss traders. And the experience that I got at Baruch was incredible, absolutely mind-blowing. internships, job placements. So it was a very, very well-rounded experience that I got, and I really hope that I've been able to help, like, give back Baruch in a lot of ways in that aspect. Now, I think in terms of the bamboo ceiling, I know I've not gotten it, but I've heard of it, and I know that it does exist. So I just think that we have to work extra hard. That's all.
Thank you. So let's shift gear a little bit. So we've heard stories about people who is trying to climb the corporate ladder, but then there's also those of us who decide not to climb the ladder, but make our own ladder and decide to find our own company and become entrepreneurs. And according to the latest PitchBook data, 98% of all funding for startups go to white males, and the other 2%, only 2% goes to diverse founders. So John, you are a CEO and a co-founder of your company, and you work with Triage, and you've worked with a lot of startups before. What has your experience been as an Asian American entrepreneur?
So it's a very mixed. I think as a bridge to the early question, I think everyone, whether we're Asian, whether we're minority or majority, in our career, we all need to find a niche, right? So I recently involved with two venture. The company I run as a CEO, Triage, we're serving the hospital and the EMS industry. EMS industry is very interesting. Talking about diversity, when I walk into some of these leadership conference, I remember the first time a few years ago, 99% of them are white Caucasian Americans. You don't even see any other minority. I think there may be one Asian other than me who's from Southeast Asian. That's probably it. So you work in a industry that's predominantly, in a majority of the population. I think the way to look at it is just sometimes not to think that you're a minority, right? Part of it is kind of like to some of the panelists, how you develop a confidence, knowing the things that you work on. I think even to the earlier question about bamboo ceiling, obviously, to that, I'm not the best person to answer that because my niche is to be an entrepreneur. I don't have to deal with, how people
with the
look
bamboo
at
ceiling.
you. Into the situation where you think, that person, that promotion may not be as competent as you think you are, but someone else get the promotion. For me, I don't like to think it's, I'm being not getting an opportunity because of my ethnical background, things like that. So find a niche about what you're best at is really important. When I was a grad at a Baruch, I studied marketing and advertising. And as many of you know, that marketing and advertising in general is not the major that what Baruch is well known for. The number one for Baruch is typical accounting. The number two is finance. So I wasn't in any of that. And when I was at Baruch from 2000 to 2002, at that time, seeing vertical campus was built, I was actually one of the first group that moved in. That was a really hard major. Imagine I was an immigrant. Even when I was in China, I was mainly more working a profession that I rely on my talking points, right? Being a sales and marketing field. So that was really difficult. So the key for me is I thought about how to develop a niche. And because of my language barrier, I knew I wasn't going to compete with the rest of the students on GPA, showing them the best students, right? But I was really working hard on improving my interview skills. So it's hard to imagine. My first job out of it was working in sales for a Fortune 500 company. And at that time, that was my maybe third year in the United States. So I really spent a lot of time to develop my interview skills. I hope this is beneficial to some of the current students, is knowing, what you are really good at. So then fast forward, what I'm doing now, on one hand, I work in a very mainstream market and Asian minority. I talk about, I don't really see myself, during day-to-day, keep thinking, worry that I'm a minority that, maybe look different by some of the industry peers. On the other hand, I do leverage my Asian heritage in my business, my most recent venture is a multi-specialty physician group serving a population of about 90,000. Most of them are in Chinese. It was co-founded with the former CEO and the founder of CityMD, which is the largest urgent care center chains in New York City, as many of you know. So, you know, that to me has a lot to do with my Asian heritage, and I leveraged years of experience and connections with physicians in the community. So, you know, that's my main takeaways. Really think about, you know, what you're good at and try to optimize your strength.
Thank you. So we talked a lot about professional development, careers, and building business. I want to next shift gear a little bit and talk about some social issues we're currently facing. Because as we all know, there's been a growing, rising anti-Asian sentiment in the recent months due to COVID, because the virus happened to come from Wuhan. And this is not the first time in our country's history where there's been anti-Asian sentiments. For example, there was the Chinese Exclusion Act back in 1882 that barred all the Chinese from becoming citizens of the United States. Then during World War II, we had all the Japanese being internment in internment camps throughout the country. But now this new wave of racism that's come up in our community in general, and you see it being impacted in a lot of the Asian communities in Chinatown, Koreatowns, for example, where the business have gone down. So I want to talk more about what are some of the actions do we need to take as a community as a whole to help combat this? And also, given that, as Dr. Wu mentioned before, we also have the Black Lives Matters movement happening at the same time, where another minority group are fighting for rights that we as Asian Americans have benefited. If you look back in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement, the Civil Rights Act, actually, as Asians, we benefited from that legislation. So I want to talk more about, ask the panel about what do you think as a community as a whole, as Asian Americans, what are the roles we should take in helping to combat racism against Asians and racism on a bigger scale in general in our country right now? And what are your thoughts? So why don't we start this one with Seema?
Yeah, so I think, so starting with anti-Asian sentiments with COVID-19, as a South Asian, it doesn't directly impact me, but it has directly impacted many of my youth. Many of my youth do identify as Southeast Asian, and so right before they had experiences right before the lockdown, and then we had to quickly pivot into virtual learning. And I think that's where we really started to discuss, unpack, and start to identify microaggressions. What are microaggressions? How do they show up in your life? How have they been showing up more frequently now? And I think tying that in with the Black Lives Matter movement, the key here is solidarity. And we can't expect communities to show up for us if we're not showing up for them. And I really strongly feel that having discussions with your family members, your community, unpacking anti-Blackness within the Asian community, and just really realizing the ways in which, yes, we've been oppressed, but there's such a spectrum of oppression, and being there for our Black brothers and sisters is important now, so that we can all work towards a collective future where we all experience liberation. We're all cohesively supporting each other. And so I think there's been so many divisive strategies used to separate the community of color. And one of those being the model minority stereotype, which many people have named as the model minority myth, and all of these different things that other communities of color have been identified or associated with. So a lot of what I'm doing with my youth is unpacking racism within like the youth development space, and just like talking about all of that, and really building solidarity with other organizations doing the work. How do we partner? How do we connect, and how do we create this cohesion towards a different kind of future?
Thank you, Seema. And Joseph, you touched on it a little bit earlier about the diversity and inclusion initiatives at Goldman Sachs to come back some of this, but maybe we could talk a little bit more about what are your personal thoughts about as a community, how the corporate community can tackle this as well?
Sure. Yeah. Look, I mean, I think President Wu, I like him channeling his inner MLK. You know, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, right? And you know, I think we, and you know, I'm at fault for this too, but like, you know, we tend to compartmentalize, you know, racism. It's like, oh, you know, we're experiencing racism as Asians, we're experiencing racism, you know, as Black people, and I think, you know, we need to sort of get over that a little bit to kind of say, like, you know, racism against Black people is racism against everybody, right? Racism against Asians is racism, just, you know, racism is bad, and we need to fight it, and all the systemic and social sort of systems that exist that kind of perpetuate it. And I think, you know, what's happening today and seeing what's going on today is both inspiring and disheartening. Disheartening, you know, to hear some of the stories of my own colleagues suffering through blatant racism. I think the lack of leadership across this nation has been disappointing. You know, the police brutality. And I think for me, the worst of it is to see somewhat a counter protest to the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like, wait, so you disagree with Black Lives mattering and disagree that racism is a bad thing? Like, what world am I living in here? Like, what year is this? It's just incredible to see. And you almost can't help but feel angry, you know, witnessing and experiencing all of this. And yet at the same time, it's been inspiring, I think, to see, you know, because it feels, I think all the, you know, the anger being channeled, I think, in positive ways. And it really does feel like in many ways a watershed moment, you know, for diversity, you know, a turning point against racism and the systems that exist, you know, that perpetuate it. And, you know, I think we can all play our parts, you know, within this, you know, within my own sort of narrow sort of Goldman view, so to speak. You know, Goldman, there's certainly been a shift in willingness and openness to discuss, you know, these sorts of issues. I think, you know, for a long while, for my own part, you know, I felt, you know, nervousness and discomfort talking about certain topics at work, you know, whether that's, you know, race, whether that's religion, whether that's politics, but you know, over the course of the past few weeks, I think the number of discussions around, you know, particularly race has just exploded. And I think that's been really heartening to see. And, you know, joining in the conversations, you know, having a voice and getting over your discomfort. I think what I'm finding more and more as I hear about, you know, these stories and learn more about, you know, the issues that we have, is just, it's actually more uncomfortable not to talk about this. And it feels like, by not talking and by not raising my voice, I am actually perpetuating some of the systems that you know, continue to, you know, like I said, perpetuate sort of racism within, you know, within the world that we live in, you know, both explicitly or even implicitly. And you know, I think, you know, we all have a job to use our voices, you know, to talk about it, get over the discomfort. I saw a comment about voting, and I think that's very important too. You know, it's been, I think, very disappointing to see some of the comments from certain mayors, certain governors, you know, even our own president, you know, and some of the comments that I've made. And, you know, I think we certainly all have, you know, an ability to do our part in that respect. I think also for us, I think there's a challenge in keeping this going, right? You know, I've talked to a lot of folks in the last couple of weeks about programs we can sort of implement, you know, within Goldman Sachs. And it's easy to have some of those conversations now while the topic is hot. But, you know, it's important for us to continue to keep talking about this and talking against racism a week from now, a month from now, a year from now, you know, when the news cycle has turned and it's no longer a hashtag issue that it is now. And, you know, I hope that I have the courage to continue that discussion. And I think we will have we all have a part to play in making sure that, you know, we don't forget about this. You know, over the next coming days, times, you know, and years.
No, thank you, Joseph, for your insights. And I totally agree that as a community, we all have our roles to play and being active and making sure that we fight institutional racism that exists in our country. So as a final quick question point before we move, because we want to make sure we reserve time for our audience to ask some questions. I'm going to ask each panelist a quick question. I'm combining a few questions into one, so feel free to just comment on the parts. what is the one piece of advice that you wish you got at graduation that you want to share with our alumni today? And also, what are some of the ways you have continued to engage with the Baruch community at post-graduation? So I guess I'm going to go alphabetically and start with John.
Yeah, so I really personally, I've benefited a lot from Baruch's network. When I was at a college, I participated the entrepreneurship competition. We won a second place. That was at that time offered the highest monetary awards in the whole country. And I had two wonderful mentors. Considering I was a second or third year immigrant in New York, I had two mentors. One was a CEO of a $1 billion hedge fund head, who's a Baruch College trustee member, Joseph Pignatelli. The other one at that time, Chief Administrative Officer, Lehman Brothers. So when people talk about it, Baruch, you didn't have enough opportunities. It's all about what you really try. And I'm continuously to be involved with the Baruch. I'm actually involved with the 17 Lex, with also executive on campus program as a mentor. And also we have a Baruch alumni, a Baruch College International Alumni Association. Sometimes people don't understand that in order to acquire something that you really have to give. And this is also one of the reasons I think American universities perform many of other universities in the world is because of the alumni network. A lot of the top American universities have built in. And I want to say, I really want to give credits to Janet, since she took over the alumni relationship office, the programs and activities that's around alumni community has been, unprecedented. Really, we've seen Baruch is putting a lot of efforts to unite all the alumni. So I would say really get involved. The more involved, the more you will be surprised what you can get out from this community.
Thank you. Joseph?
Sure, I'll pick the best advice one, and there's so many good pieces of advice, but the one I'll go with today is better to look stupid today than to look even stupider tomorrow. And ask questions, right? If you don't quite know what's being asked of you, it's better to get the clarity now than to turn in a bad work product tomorrow. Finding ways to ensure that you're asking the questions. Don't be afraid to look stupid. Ask the questions. Today, and it'll always look worse on you if you have to ask it tomorrow because, you were afraid to ask yesterday.
Thank you. Kenneth?
Yeah, for me, it would be get a mentor. Spend the time to, invest your efforts into finding a good mentor and reach out to the alumni community because a lot of these folks have already fought the battles that you're about to fight, and you could learn a lot from their experience. So that, with that in mind, I think that any new graduate or any people that are currently out there that don't have mentors or not reaching out to the alumni network, they really ought to take advantage of that. That is one of the benefits that we have being as part of this Baruch family. Poe mentioned that there's so many of us, there's 20,000 Asian alumni out there, and you don't have to stay with the Asians. You can go to any alumni. Really, just think about it. We have such a network in this tri-state area and around the country. You might as well take advantage of that. With respect to volunteering and all that, I think I echo what Joseph and John has mentioned. Janet is great on this, and she's in charge of the alumni relations and volunteer engagements. I mean, take advantage of that, folks. This is amazing. If you don't know how to get there, just go into Google and just type in Baruch College volunteer opportunities, and it'll take you right to a webpage. You fill out the information, and Janet will reach out to you. Janet or someone in her office will reach out to you and plug you in. You can be a mentor for other folks that are aspiring to walk the path that you're walking. You can, do it on a long-term commitment. I've been a mentor for a number of mentees over the years. It could be a long-term engagement, lasting a few years, but they really only look to the standard student year from September to May. And you can also have like short stints of morning or afternoon mentor opportunities. It is amazing that if you put your investment into these students, I mean, you get a lot back. You learn more about yourself, and you could develop your own network as well. So I would say take advantage of that.
No, definitely. There are so many mentoring programs on campus, and I think Janet will share that later. There's also a form that I think we could share, if either Greg or Janet could share how you could fill out a form to volunteer for the Baruch community. Next, we're going to go to Nadia.
So the one piece of advice that I would give, or I wish I had gotten, is how do you consider, how happy do you consider yourself? How fulfilled do you consider yourself in the job that you take, in the job that you do? And if you don't, then make sure that you get to that point. And the reason why I say this is because it eventually catches up with you. If you're not happy and satisfied with where your life is going, you'll never feel fulfilled. So we all work really hard to get to a certain point, but we really do not give our happiness and our satisfaction enough weight. So please think about where you would want to go, and like, it needs to start with happiness.
I think that is so true when it comes to one's career.
And one thing that I've been doing, sorry, Christine, I've been the Baruch school captain for the MFE program. So I help them recruit from Baruch, and Baruch actually went from silver to gold. I would like to say platinum, but it's not platinum yet. So we are hiring a lot of good kids from Baruch, and we've been extremely happy. I also helped Dan and the team set up like the Peking University tours at City, so they can just do like a walk around and see the trading floors, etc. at City. So yeah, just something small, very small, but happy to help in any way. Yeah.
Next we go to Paul.
So piece of advice would be, start for those who have started working or are still in school, start building your network now. And one thing I learned when I was so busy going to school back and forth, and I never really made time to branch out. And I think that kind of set me back when I started working. But start now. And I always say, looking back on it now, I always say, those could become friendships. And I always say friendships are harder to break than business relationships. So, if you start now, you'll be surprised in 4 or 5 years down the road how far, your network or your group of friends will have grown. And, just help each other and, be honest, and you'll be surprised where it takes you.
And Seema?
For me, I think one piece of advice echoes what Kenneth has mentioned earlier about mentors. I graduated recently from Baruch, but it's been about 10 years since I finished my undergraduate education. And the advice I wish I'd gotten then was to create my own sort of board of directors, different maybe levels of people in different levels of their career, of which I had an interest, that could maybe serve as a sounding board. Maybe 2, 3, 4, or 5 people who I could ask different types of questions to, from negotiation to like how do you manage a certain situation, different cultural backgrounds, different could be also different sectors. That's all very useful information. And I think to your point about engaging with the Baruch community, it can be small ways. Like I have sent job postings to the Marx School. Suzanne Grossman has been amazing. She runs the Marx Career Services and Alumni Relations office, and I've maintained a relationship with her. I have found her to be very resourceful in my job search when I was graduating and connecting me with alums. So all of those different ways, really connecting with alums through Baruch has been powerful.
Thank you, Seema. And thank you to all the panelists. I know we're right now at 7:30. We could have sat here all night and continue the conversation for hours and hours, because there's just so much for us to talk about this conversation. But for those of you, if you could stay, we do want to do a few minutes of question and answer from the audience to give everyone a chance to speak up and ask their questions. And Janet and Greg, if you could kindly help us funnel some questions to the panelists, that would be great.
Absolutely. I just want to thank all the panelists. This has been an incredible conversation. And just to quickly reiterate a couple points, we've been building affinity networks over the last year, and our Latinx Somos network will be hosting a cocktail hour this Thursday evening where you can learn how to make a few Latin cocktails. We have our Robert C. Weaver Society alumni, Black Alumni Network that is hosting an event in July. We also have an LGBTQ network, as well as regional alumni clubs and so forth. And if anyone is interested in being involved with those, similar to the International Business Alumni Network that John mentioned, please be in touch, because we are here to support you. And by you, we are close to 160,000 alumni. So as our panelists have mentioned, the network is broad and diverse. And please, whatever industry you are in or want to be in, we are keen to help support you and your advancement in those fields. Of particular note, another initiative we launched recently was building in-house corporate networks. So for instance, we are hosting an alumni gathering for all of the alumni who work at Goldman Sachs, of which there are over 200 plus. We've hosted, this coming Thursday actually, we are hosting a similar event with the accounting firm RSM tomorrow. We've hosted events at Citi and other companies, EY, CohnReznick, and are keen to develop these internal networks so that Baruch alumni are in touch with each other within these companies and can cultivate one another, mentor, as well as continue to advance professionally. Of course, hire Baruch is my favorite mantra, and one of the best ways to encourage and drive the expanded diversity initiative across your own companies and your own teams is posting jobs on our job board and on our LinkedIn pages. We have a new LinkedIn page for our Asian Heritage Alumni Network, which we will post in our group chat, as well as in our follow-up email. So, and if any of you have ideas for other ways to engage, we are here to support you, so please let us know. Many of the questions that were posted have been sort of answered over the course of the conversation. I guess the one question that I will pass to the committee was to the panelists was, will you please share with us a moment that was your pivot moment as a professional to stand up as an Asian American professional, and what was that experience like? And do you have recommendations on sort of when it's appropriate to have that moment? I think, Nandita, might we start with you?
Sure. Again, where do I start? Lots of pivots in like the span of 13, 14, 15 years. So I was at JP Morgan structuring subprime mortgages, and I found that it was at a time where everything was amazing, right? Like, the world was amazing, and suddenly the world was not. And as an Asian, at that time I was not an American. I was still an Indian citizen, so I had visa issues and everything else. And I realized that I was out of the job because of the whole subprime crisis. the one thing that that was like a big pivotal time in my career is if you get a big setback, how do you come out of it, right? Because you're like, oh my God, I went to Baruch, I did this fancy program, and now I'm working for a nice bank, and suddenly, wow, I have like, so you fall flat. And how do you, I think that point, I wish that I had like, this insight that it's okay. Just keep working. Just put yourself through any job and you'll get like to the next level. And which is what I did, but with like obviously not any of that knowledge. I just did because that's what you do. And I think that's a big important step, is that no job is too small. If you have to do something to get to the next level, just do it. The sense of entitlement is not going to help any of us. And I think that piece, you have, either you learn or or you get it as an advice, but that piece is a really important piece, especially for the younger generation, because I see that there is a huge sense of entitlement for them. I should just be getting all of these things. Why am I not getting it?
Thank you so much. Ken, as a rising lawyer on the partner track, was there any moment that was a moment of particular pivot for you?
I think when I first joined MMC, over 20 years ago now. So I think I'm past that rising lawyer type of thing. One of the things that that I was doing was my boss who had hired me wanted me to check something, and I was in a tax area. And what I did was I realized something was odd in the advice he was giving, and I confronted him, but sort of nicely. And he didn't understand what I was talking about. And I said, all right, let me try to rephrase it. And I gave him examples and illustrations, and he couldn't get it. He just did not understand what I was talking about. And then, and it was just like, I think a month or two into the job, and I had just switched careers from a Big Four to this role. He was saying words like, oh, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Oh, I really, of all my hires, I really regret, bringing you on board. And I was, at that time, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. And so I didn't bow, didn't cave. I asked him, well, who's the smartest person that you know in this particular field? And this was an area I wasn't, it's tax, but it was like real estate law. And he said, oh, the most brilliant person I know is so-and-so at so-and-so firm. I said, let's call that person up. And we called the person up. And I was explaining the situation, and I was explaining my reasoning and why I think that we're about to step into a big pile of problems. And, the seconds like expand to like hours, and I could feel like sweat, just pouring off my face because I was so nervous. And the advisor said, it was a moment of silence, and he goes, Ken, you're absolutely right. You guys would have been in a big, problem had you had gone down this road. And my boss, who was consulting with very senior people, really had to then backtrack because we were about to step into something really big. And afterwards, just a wave of relief. He pulls me to the side. He goes, Ken, he said, I really like the fact that you stand on your own 2 feet, that you're not going to cave in. He said, other people would have caved in. You didn't cave in. And now I'm going to bring you in my inner circle. And I thought that was really cool.
That's a great story.
2 or 3 bosses ago now. So bosses keep changing.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. John, is there a moment in your career that was a massive pivot for you as a professional or as a Asian American?
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit different angle. So my company, the company I run, is called a Triage. It's a very controversial name that often people get confused about triage. They think it's a mispronunciation. Some people would call this name is, I can't really stand with this name. And unfortunately, I inherited the name. I didn't come up with it. So, as an entrepreneur and a marketer, when we try to talk to customers, the goal in mind is how do we make ourselves memorable, whether it's the product or myself. And so I often pivot this, at the beginning of this presentation, I always tell people that, in case if you wonder where we got this name, it's not because I'm an Asian American with a speech impairment, okay? That is because the name came from Twitter. So I use a humorous icebreaker to get the laugh out of the room first, because we often, otherwise what happens is that during the middle or toward the later part of the presentation, they say, I love the product, but I just don't understand where you got this name. 9 out of the 10 times, I'm curious, where did you really get this name, right? And in case I'm the only Asian typically standing in the room, and I don't want to be look like a stranger or a different person. So my strategy is to think about what are the situation that you make a people relax, is really make a people laugh, right? And sometimes it's all about to turn a awkward moment into a situation that's advantageous to you. So, that's why I'm saying use a different approach to think about this. We all know there's some people who are very humorous and can take a controversial situation into a more relaxing moment and make yourself more memorable. And we all like people who have characters. So I encourage everyone to think about this. Don't always think about this is stressful, I look different when I walk into the room.
Thank you so much, John. Joseph, is there a pivotal moment you'd like to share?
Sure. I think the one I'll use is, after I had, been announced as a managing director, at Goldman Sachs, within controllers within my division, there's a celebratory drinks that literally all of controllers, goes to a dive bar a couple of blocks away. And what caught me off guard, I would say there were 2 cohorts of people that evening that came out to me and consistently said, congratulations, good to see, somebody representing, sort of thing. One was Baruch alumni, saying that, hey, it's amazing to see a Baruch graduate make it to MD, congratulations. And these were people I had never interacted with before. It's like, how do you even know I graduated from Baruch? Like, it's incredible. And the second cohort was Asians. And again, people I just had zero interaction with before, just coming up to me saying, congratulations, great to see another Asian, make it up to the senior ranks. And it was like, look, there are other senior leaders, right? I remember naming a few others. And one of the things that really hit me was, it's like, yes, but all of the other Asians that made it are either in technology or in modeling. And it's good to see someone that's not in technology and modeling make it. And I had never thought about it from that perspective before. But I think, it really made me sort of appreciate, I guess, that, my sort of promotion, so to speak, I'm not just seen as another managing director, right? It's the way I sort of act and carry myself, I think reflects on, just a broader Asian community within Goldman, and also made me realize that, a lot of people obviously look up to the title, but also, looking up to, and seeing, another Asian American sort of make it up through the gauntlet, that makes them feel like they can make it as well. And, it was really, I think at that point, for me, it just kind of, a light sort of clicked on, and I feel like I've been a lot more active, just again, within the affinity networks, within the mentoring, at Goldman Sachs. I think, having kind of gone through that experience, and, again, people who I had very little to no interaction before, just, saying their kudos and saying their little bit.
That's a great story, Joseph. And my new favorite thing to share is that about 100,000, if not more, of our alumni population have only graduated within the last 20 years. And so therefore, I anticipate in the next decade, we're going to see a lot more Baruch alumni reaching the C-suite. And I call it the popcorn effect, that that Baruch alumni are going to pop into the C-suite or managing director role or launching new initiatives, new businesses, running nonprofits, because we're getting to, just from an experience perspective, but also a diversity perspective. So thank you so much for sharing that. Paul and then Seema, and then I'll turn to Christine to do a final wrap up. Paul, do you have a pivot story you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I mean, maybe I'll take it, way further back. I think for me, it was really at Baruch. And I still remember, I was never really, and a lot of my people who I meet, don't really believe the story, but I was a very lost cause, so to speak. I was never, the most studious, and I always kind of struggled my way, did the bare minimum, and found my way through Baruch. But I still remember the English professor I had. I think it was in my sophomore year. I think Professor Shulman, and I think that was my pivotal moment where I think it was just instilling the confidence that hey, you're not the the dumbest guy, and you can do this. So I think that kind of has snowballed down to many other things in life. But I think for me, I'm so thankful to the school, because it really was my gateway to the American dream.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Paul. And we hope that our student body will be encouraged likewise, as you were. Seema, tell us about your pivot moment.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this question a lot and how I might want to answer it. And what really comes to mind is, so just to frame a little bit, a lot of my experience has been community centered and on really like a grassroots level within the nonprofit sector. And so there was this one experience I had in a workplace setting that was very, it was very clear who was leading the narrative, and it was very white dominant at the top on leadership, also in within the board of directors of the organization. And as an Asian American woman, as a woman of color, I started to notice that my voice wasn't as valued as it had been in other spaces. And so I started to notice that my opinions were not exactly welcome or not taken into account. I didn't see changes made when I made suggestions in program areas that I saw that we can maybe grow or shift. And I think it was a very challenging period, and a short period. I did not stay very long at the organization, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about power, about privilege. A lot of the white cultural norms that I was experiencing was just so different than what I experienced growing up as Asian American. The way that I think we're taught to be collaborative, to really see ourselves within the collective, and all the other things that were mentioned earlier about the ways in which we're raised. So I struggled. I did struggle, and I sought out mentors within the organization, and I found community there. And I found that a lot of other people of color were experiencing the same thing. And so I saw that as a battle that maybe wasn't worth me fighting, because it was a part of this greater, this pattern that had been there for decades. And there were so many people that tried to change that pattern and to bring more racial equity in the work and so on. And so I think there's sometimes moments where you realize like it's okay to move on, and it's okay to pursue something different. And so I moved on, and I think it really changed the way I look at my work, and racial equity is so important in the work I do. And especially with what's going on now, even more important in sustaining in the long term. So I do it with my youth as a mentor to the youth I serve. I make sure that I underline how important it is to take up space. and all the ways, and just really giving them opportunities to participate and to facilitate, just to practice taking up space in those different ways. So I take that experience with me in everything that I do, and even having conversations at my own organization about ways we can improve, like always looking about ways we can improve and become more racially equitable and more inclusive and more welcoming of different leadership models and different leadership styles that different people and different cultural groups may, I think, display that are equally as important.
That's wonderful. Giving oneself permission to take up space and to speak up and own your truth and build connection. That's what this is all about. That's what this is all about. Christine, any comments you would like to share on this?
I just want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and having this really honest and engaging conversation. And I think this is what the Asian Heritage Alumni Network is about. It's a forum for us to have these conversations. Some of the topics might be a little uncomfortable or sensitive, but I think it's important we really have these honest conversations and be able to have a comfort space, a safe zone, so to speak, to talk about it. And I think Baruch should be one of the space that that can be used for that, so that we could push for changes going forward. Want to thank all of our panelists, John, Joseph, Kenneth, Nadia, Paul, Seema, and also to thank Janet, you and your team, Greg and Nicole, who've been working tirelessly behind the scenes to get this initiative going and to make the launch a very successful one tonight. And if you could all join our LinkedIn group and stay in touch with us, that's in the chat box, as well as please fill out the survey, because this forum is for our entire alumni community. And we really want to find out what you are interested in so that we provide the programming and come up with events in the future that will serve your needs as a community. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks to you and Poe as well for leading this initiative. And the one thing that, that we ask is for those folks who joined us tonight, please indeed fill out the survey, but please also forward it to a friend, because we would like to know, we had a wonderful attendance of close to 150 folks this evening, but if we were able to get 300 responses to our survey or more, please spread the word, because this network has the opportunity to truly be incredible and make a difference. So please do share that link with a friend. So that we can expand our engagement and bring more Baruch alumni closer and back to the Baruch family. Everyone, have a wonderful evening. Have a lovely 4th of July. We look forward to seeing some of you at our upcoming events. And if you have any ideas for future programming, please email us. We'd love to hear. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Thank you
Good
very
night.
much. Thumbs up, everyone. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Good night. Thank you.